Hi, this is Luke Powell, and welcome to the Anything Goes Triathlon question and answer session. A little bit about myself. I'm a triathlete, been doing triathlons for 8 years now, but more importantly, and before all of that, I'm a husband and a father. As you can see here, I have a beautiful wife and three beautiful children, ages 6, 4, and 2, so they take up a lot of time and have a lot of things going on that I enjoy being a part of. So that's kind of where the inspiration for this new book that I've written comes from. The book is The Balanced Approach. It's how to complete a full distance triathlon, training an average of 7 hours a week. And this is something that a philosophy that I just developed over a several year period as I wanted to train for a full distance triathlon, but knew that if I dedicated the amount of time and energy that most people do for training for a race that consists of 140.6 miles, that I would be neglecting my family, children, and my work life. And that's not something I wanted to do in order to reach this goal. So that's kind of the background on where the book has come from. We had several questions come in over the last few weeks, and so I'm going to address those questions now as best I can. Some of the questions were asked by multiple people several different ways, so you may not see the exact question that you asked, but hopefully we will cover what your question was and get you the answer that you're looking for. So the crux of my program revolves around HIIT, and the acronym stands for High Intensity Interval Training. So what is that? So it basically consists of intense periods of work or segments or intervals, whatever you want to call them, to where you're going hard during these segments, but then you have a rest period between them. So they can consist of anywhere from a few seconds of hard work with a time in between, or they can be several minutes. I would say anywhere from 5 seconds up to 10 minutes is in the particular training plan that I've outlined that I follow, depending on what part of the training season you're in and what your goal is for that specific workout. And this applies to swimming, biking, and running. And so why have I decided to do it this way? Well, there's several benefits as opposed to doing what a traditional long distance, long course triathlete would train, which would be a lot of long, slow distance training. They may never get their heart rate above a certain level, logging lots of miles, both in the pool, on the bike, and on the road running. And they log those miles weekend after weekend, week after week for the training period. And that's done because a long distance triathlon is an endurance event. And historically, that's how these events have been trained for, is you log these long endurance training sessions and build up your aerobic base. But there's lots of research out there to show that you can build this aerobic base in more than one way. And one way to do it is obviously logging lots of miles. The other way to do it is with this high intensity interval training. There's a particular research that was done by University of Western Ontario that took two groups. One of them was doing a 30 to 60 minute aerobic workout, which would be at a lower heart rate, kind of the long, slow distance type workout that most long course triathletes do in training. Second group did 4 to 6 30-second sprints with 4-minute recoveries. This would be an example of a high intensity interval training program. So what they had these groups do this for several weeks, and at the end of the several weeks, they measured several things with both groups. They both had an increased VO2 max, which we don't have to get into exactly what that is, but it's basically your top end level of oxygen consumption. They increased their time trial running a short sprint distance. They increased they lowered their time, so they became faster and increased at a short distance race. And they also had an increase in their aerobic activity, which is the aerobic engine is what you want to work on building for a long distance triathlon. And so they saw the same benefits as someone that would be training at a lower intensity for longer periods of time. So why would you want to do both? You pick one or the other, and one of them involves a lot of time spent exercising, while the other one involves less overall time, and you have gains in cardiovascular health, but you're spending less time training. So you become another advantage of the HIIT type high intensity training, as you see on the bullet points here, is fat burning. And so you become more metabolically efficient as you do these intervals over time. Several weeks into the training program, your body will become accustomed to this type of training, and you become a fat burning machine in far less time than it takes to accomplish that by doing long aerobic sessions. Another benefit is improved power to weight ratio, because what's going to happen through this program is you're going to lose unwanted pounds while getting stronger. So it's kind of a nice little benefit to this type of program, is you're going to lose weight, whether that's a goal of yours or not. There's most often people get into triathlon for more than one reason, and I find that most people's reasons to get in shape to lose some unwanted pounds, and so that's another benefit of this type of training. So there's lots of benefits to it. The main one for the purpose of the program, the reason I started using high intensity interval training was the less time spent training. I wanted to find a way to train properly for a long distance triathlon without spending 20 plus hours a week in training and neglecting other things in my life that I feel were important. So the average workout that I have during my 36-week training program is in the neighborhood of 45 minutes to an hour tops. And those training involve lots of high intensity intervals. And it's not an easy, by any stretch of imagination, it's not something that's easy to do. You really have to learn how to push yourself in these intervals. There's certain goals you're trying to hit, whether that be a time for a lap in the pool or a certain power number on the bike, if you have a power meter, or a certain level of intensity. Same with running. It could be based on a certain time or pace that you're looking to accomplish during these intervals. And in order for them to work properly, in order for you to get those anaerobic fitness gains, you have to really push yourself hard and try to accomplish those intervals, those goals that you set for those intervals. So this is not something that you should go into lightly, thinking this will be an easy way out, an easier way to get to your goal of completing a long distance triathlon. This is just a different approach, an approach that I would recommend if you are concerned about having a more balanced approach to your life and not strictly be focused on triathlon. So another question that came up, it kind of it was asked several different ways, is what level of fitness do I need to have before starting this type of training approach? And what I would recommend is that you don't come right off the couch and start doing high intensity intervals. It does take a little bit of time for your body to get used to it. And the way the training program's lined out is the first several weeks, it kind of eases you in to the plan. So you're not coming out day one doing a 10-minute interval session at an all-out intensity. So no, you don't have to be used to doing these type of intervals, but you do have to have a certain base level of fitness. Your body has to be ready to do this. I wanted to say someone that is, hasn't trained for any type of endurance event or hasn't done triathlons in the past, this probably isn't something I would recommend to start from day one. Preferably, 1 to 2 years of triathlon training and racing, because there are, in order to understand the program and understand what's going on in the program, you have to have a little bit of knowledge for swimming, biking, and running. And it's nice to have a little bit of that work under your belt coming in, so that your body is used to training. And if you don't know how to swim, it's going to be really hard to go out the first couple weeks of the training program and be able to complete the workouts. So that's my recommendation, is a couple years of training. It could be just that maybe this is your first year in triathlon, but you have a background in swimming or biking, and you understand you know the technical side of things, and you have that ability, and it's not going to impede your progress as the plan goes along. So it's definitely not a couch to 5K type plan. It's not a couch to Ironman plan, but you do not have to have previously completed an Ironman. But maybe you've done some shorter distance triathlons the previous years, and you're ready to take that leap into doing a full distance triathlon, or maybe you've done one and had minimal success, or wanted to do one again but didn't want to spend the time and energy that required the previous time you did a full distance race. So that's kind of who this book was written for and who the plan is designed for. So I would recommend you're not a newbie, but you don't have to be a 10-year experienced veteran to handle this plan either. So get a lot of questions about nutrition, and that's a big part of the balanced approach to triathlon, is having that balance between not only the type of training you're doing and when you're doing your workouts and how intense they are, but also everything else that involves your body the other 23 hours of the day. And so I'll cover a lot of that in the book, and you'll see as you go through the book. I mean, the idea of the book is to be more of a reference manual. It's not a book you'll read through one time and put on a shelf and never reference again. As you're going through the plan and as you're starting to do the workouts and you're just starting to make changes to your nutrition, it's something that you'll need to reference as you're going along. I've been doing triathlons for several years before I started really looking into my diet and what I was eating. And when I decided to make the change from I guess what I would call a standard American diet, a lot of processed foods. I didn't consider my eating habits unhealthy, but looking back, they were considerably unhealthy. And when I made the change, I could see direct results in not only my race results, but how I felt during training, how I felt leading up to races, how I felt after training and after races, as far as how quick my recovery was. So I can't say enough about how important it is to think about everything that you're eating, everything that you put in your body, and what effect that is going to have on your workouts and how you feel. So it's garbage in, garbage out. You can't put junk into your body and then expect to have high performance during training and during races. So without the proper diet, you're going to have trouble hitting those intervals. You're going to have trouble hitting that time that you wanted to. You're not going to be progressing as you feel like it, because your body needs good, clean fuel in order to produce what you're looking to produce. I mean, the analogy has always been out there. You don't put, the cheap generic gas and the cheap oil into a nice sports car. You want to take care of it. You want to make sure that it's well maintained if you want the performance out of that car that is capable of. And the same goes for your body. Another question that came in had to do with the type of foods that I eat. I try to eat a very clean diet with foods in their natural whole form as much as possible. And a lot of people are confused about organic versus non-organic. What needs to be organic? What can you buy that's not organic? Is it going to cause an issue with you? And my philosophy, organic does cost more. I mean, there's a lot that goes into getting that organic label put on your package or on your piece of produce or on your meat. And it's not easy for farmers or companies to get that. And so there's added costs that goes into that. So yeah, it's more expensive. And so when I'm looking at what types of food do I want to buy that are labeled organic for my family versus non-organic, a rule of thumb that I typically use is, start with meat. I always try to buy organic meat when possible, because it's basically the non-organic stuff is so much worse than the organic. It's worth paying the extra price for meat as far as that goes. Red meat, chicken, seafood especially, make sure it's organic and not farmed seafood. Another rule of thumb I use is if I eat the skin on the piece of fruit or the vegetable, I'll try to buy it organic. So that would be things like apples, or if we're talking vegetables, maybe potatoes, carrots, cucumbers, things like that, where you typically eat the skin. I try to buy organic because the non-organic is going to be sprayed with pesticides, and that's something that you can't really easily wash off of fruits and vegetables. Things that I typically buy that are non-organic are things where you wouldn't normally eat the skin, such as avocados, such as oranges, pineapples, anything where you're peeling the skin or taking the skin off of the fruit or vegetable. You can usually get away with non-organic. Sure, there's going to be some things as far as the quality of the soil that'll go into the actual part of the fruit or vegetable that you eat, that you're going to get a better quality versus organic. And if you have an unlimited budget, I would buy everything organic. But if you want to nail down and try to determine what's most important, that's kind of some rules of thumb I use. Other things, as you're training, inflammation is a big inhibitor to progress while you're training, as far as making goals and healing quickly between workouts and after races. If you have inflammation, chronic inflammation in your body, it's going to be very hard for your body to heal. And that inflammation starts in the gut. It starts with what you eat and what you're putting into your body and how your body processes and uses that. And there's certain foods that are anti-inflammatory that will help reduce that chronic inflammation in your body, help your muscles and joints recover faster. Some good anti-inflammatory foods are omega-3 fats. You can find that in seafood, wild-caught salmon, tuna, flax seeds. I'll add flax seeds to smoothies that I make, or add it into different foods just for the anti-inflammatory properties. Leafy greens like kale, spinach, collard greens, those all have good anti-inflammatory properties that are good for healing of your body. Blueberries, any kind of fermented foods are good. So that could be sauerkraut, olives, pickles, kefir. There's lots of fermented foods that you could find. And then avocados are one of my go-tos. I eat lots of avocados. That's a good anti-inflammatory food. And also spices. Garlic is something also that's got lots of good anti-inflammatory properties. And spices such as cloves, ginger, rosemary, turmeric, even cinnamon. Just using those in your cooking. And I'm really fortunate that my wife is such a good cook and incorporates a lot of these anti-inflammatory foods into our normal meals that we eat. So it's not something I have to consciously be thinking about. Am I getting enough of these? It's, and if you learn to cook that way, or your spouse or whoever does the cooking in your family can start incorporating these in, it's not something you have to constantly focus on. Am I getting enough of these anti-inflammatory foods in my diet to help combat the damage that I'm doing to my body through these hard workouts? And on the flip side, there are foods that add to that inflammation. They're going to slow down the healing process. Those are any type of refined carbohydrates. So that's breads, pastas, any type of fried foods will add to inflammation in the body. Sugar in any form, artificial and natural sweeteners will add to inflammation. Alcohol, unfortunately, also adds to inflammation. It's nice to have that beer after a long, hard workout on a hot day, but, just keep it in moderation. Know that is going to add to the inflammation and make it harder for your body to heal. Something else that I mentioned kind of falls under the realm of nutritional recommendations that I get questions about fairly often are, what supplements do I take? And, the key thing to remember about supplements is that supplements should never be taken in exchange for eating whole foods. Don't take a supplement just because you feel like you can cheat on your diet and not have to eat certain foods. Like I'm not going to eat fish because I'm taking this omega-3 supplement, or I cannot eat a balanced diet with lots of vegetables because I'm taking a vitamin C supplement. These should be taken in addition to a whole balanced diet full of good food in their whole form. But, there are certain supplements that I feel are important to help your body recover. I mean, let's face it, your training and the method of training and doing triathlon is not something that is natural for the human body, and you're putting it through a lot of stresses that normally it's not going to see, that the average person who's maybe not doing this type of training doesn't need to worry about. So there are some supplements that I use from time to time, depending on what part of the season it is, as far as my training goes, what time of year it is. I'll rotate some supplements in and out, but some of them that I typically take are Wobenzym, which helps with inflammation. It helps with joint recovery. I'll take that during the harder training months of the season. Vitamin C, vitamin D3, vitamin A, those are some micronutrients that will take on occasion, especially the vitamin C and vitamin D in the wintertime when I'm not getting the sun exposure. And there's also, I want to build up my immune system. I'll take those as well, just based on the season, the time of year. Other supplements that I'll take are digestive enzymes. Those help with digestion and help with the gut inflammation that I mentioned earlier. Everything starts in the gut. If you can help your body properly digest the foods that you're putting in there, it cuts down on that gut inflammation. So digestive enzymes are good for that, as well as probiotics. You get the good bacteria formed in your gut through probiotics and also through foods that you're eating. I mentioned earlier, some of the fermented foods, those are also very high in probiotics, and that helps with overall gut health and helps your body recover faster. Another thing that kind of falls under the supplement category is apple cider vinegar. During training season, I'll take a couple swigs of that every night before bed. That, I could spend a whole presentation talking on the positive benefits of apple cider vinegar, but it takes a quick Google search. If you want to Google it, Google apple cider vinegar benefits, and trust me, it's worth having a bottle in your house. You can not only drink it, but it's got lots of other uses around the house. It's pretty amazing stuff. So I'll throw that in under the supplements category. I think that's something really important to make as part of your regular routine during this plan. Okay, another question that I've got about, what type of equipment do I need? I already briefly mentioned when you're doing the intervals to, focusing on a certain time, split time, or heart rate, or perceived level of exertion, or on the bike, a certain power level you want to achieve during the interval period. So this question is, what type of equipment do I need? So I've made a little list here, but if you've done triathlons in the past, if this is your third, fourth year doing triathlons, you're more than likely going to have some of, if not all of this gear. So, we'll start off with the swim. Obviously, you're going to need somewhere to swim. Most of us don't have a pool in our backyard or have access to a pool we can use year-round at our home, like an endless pool or something like that. So you're going to have to find a pool. That's more likely going to be a swim club or the YMCA or somewhere that you can have access whenever it's convenient for you to get in several pool workouts, swim workouts a week. It's also nice to have access to open water at some point during the season. There are some workouts in the plan that call for you to be out in the open water where you're not in a pool, to try to focus on your pacing and make sure you've got your pacing down without there being a clock right next to you at the pool, or knowing when you hit a lane line or hit the wall that you've done it in a certain amount of time. It's a lot harder sometimes to pace yourself when you're out in open water. So, and you also don't want to jump in open water, your first big race be the first time you've been in open water. So access to a pool and a body of water is important. Obviously, you'll need goggles, some type of swim attire, whether you want that to be a Speedo, if you're so inclined, or you want to be a full swimsuit or jammers. There's lots of different options there. Things I've recommended, they're not required, but recommendations for a swim are pull buoy, fins, and paddles. These are used for drills. The pull buoy is something, it's a flotation device you stick between your legs to help keep your legs up in the water, up near the top of the water, the surface of the water, so that you can focus on your arms and focus on your body rotation, your swim stroke, without having to worry about kicking your legs and and keeping your core tight to keep your legs up out of the water. Fins are similar to that. You put fins on, you really just have to kick every few strokes to keep your legs up, and it can really help you with developing your arm turnover and speed on your top end. And paddles are used. You put them on your hands, and it's kind of a strength workout for the pool. It helps you focus on what your hand feels like as it's going through the water, and really can help you work on your form in the pool. For the bike, obviously you need a bike, and the majority of the workouts that I have outlined are going to require you to really focus on the intervals, and that is hard to do if you're out riding on the road. Things that impede you on the road are stop signs, stop lights, traffic. Depending on where you are, you're going to have hills that'll pop up. You could be trying to get out a 2-minute interval, and depending on where you are during your ride, if you're outside, the beginning of that 2-minute interval could start at the bottom of a hill, which would make it really difficult, or it could be at the top of a hill. So you're starting your 2-minute interval and you're immediately going downhill, and it's going to be hard to get up to speed. It's going to be hard to push yourself as you need to for that interval. So I really recommend you get an indoor trainer, or if you're really brave, get some rollers, which are going to require you to keep balanced as you're riding the bike. It's going to be tough. The longer the workouts, the more intense the workouts get, it's going to be tough to stay focused on keeping balance on that rollers. But, that's obviously going to be something that even makes you a better cyclist. So if you want to go down that road, have at it. Good luck with that. I don't want to be prone to falling off my trainer in the basement, so I try to stay away from the rollers. The indoor trainers, lots of different trainers you can buy. There's fluid trainers, there's air trainers, there's trainers that are hooked up to computers where you can dial in what wattage you want to maintain or what type of workout you want, and they will adjust the tension on the trainer based on that workout. The type of trainer I have is not adjustable. It's just a fluid trainer, so I basically set the tension, and that's where it stays, and I have to just change gears on the bike to make that easier or more difficult depending on what type of interval it is. So I would recommend a trainer. You can find used trainers on the internet pretty simply through Craigslist or eBay, and more than likely the trainer's still going to be in good shape. I've had mine for 5 or 6 years now, never had a problem with it. There's really not much that can go wrong with it. So if you get yourself a used one or buy a new one, it's a good investment for long-term training. And recommended but not required on the bike would be a bike computer or a watch. The reason for this is, you want to be able to keep track of how far you've gone, how long the ride is, what your speed is, what your pace is. Keep track of these things during your interval sessions. And the reason I like to do that is because, as you'll see when you get the book and you look at the training plan, there's only a total of 10 workouts for each discipline. There's 10 swim workouts, 10 bike workouts, and 10 run workouts. So for simplicity's sake, the workouts are scattered throughout different times of the year, and the workout may differ slightly. You may do the same workout that you did 2 months ago, but maybe this workout you're doing 6 intervals instead of 4 intervals as you build through the training season. But the good thing I like about having a limited number of workouts is I can look back and say, before I do the workout, say, okay, let's look back. Last time I did this particular workout, I was able to hold this speed during my interval sessions, or hold this wattage, this power during interval sessions. Let's see if I can at least maintain that this time I do the workout, or maybe even improve that. And you can set little small goals for yourself along the way, and referencing back to those can be a big motivator and also help you see your progress. And so with a bike computer or watch, you can keep track of those things, and you can either write them down, or you can put them, upload them into a software programs such as Training Peaks or Garmin Connect or Nike, whatever, Nike Plus, whatever you happen to use or whatever you like using. There's lots of free programs out there. You can upload your information from a bike, computer, or watch and keep track of your previous workouts. Other things are heart rate monitor. This is one that is, not required but recommended for both your bike and run workouts. And as you look at the plan, you'll see it calls for you to do certain workouts in certain zones, and those zones can be based on a certain heart rate or they can be based on a certain power on the bike. So that's why I recommend having both a power meter and a heart rate monitor, but they're not required. But as you get into the plan, it's going to be beneficial to you, and you can get a heart rate monitor fairly inexpensively. And so I would, at the minimum, recommend that you do that just so you can monitor your heart rate during your workouts, and you can record what it is during certain interval sessions, how high it got, what the peak heart rate was, what the average heart rate was. These are things you can record, and you'll see, as you see gains in your fitness, you'll be able to maintain your heart rate, but you'll get faster as you run, or you'll be able to produce more power at the same heart rate as you get more fit as the training season goes on. The last thing I have here is a cadence sensor. The document I recently put out there for anyone that is on the email list to receive notification when the book release had to do with race day execution. And a big part of my race day execution involves cadence on both the bike and the run. And that's basically how fast you're turning your feet over, how many revolutions per minute on the bike and the run you're maintaining. And so that's why I threw the cadence sensor in here. It's a big part of my training now that I focus on my cadence on both the bike and the run. And so it's not required. There's no specific, workouts that require you to have a cadence sensor. There are a couple workouts that require you to spin fast on the bike at a lower intensity on the bike, but that doesn't have to be something you monitor continuously. You can do a quick count, over 6 seconds or 10 seconds and make sure you're keeping that cadence kind of in the range it needs to be. So moving on to the run, obviously you need running shoes and running attire. Those are, anybody that's doing this program are obviously going to already have that type of gear. I'm not going to get into the debate on running shoes, what type of running shoes you need. Do you need a built-up running shoe, a minimalist shoe? My thought is if you've got shoes that you're wearing and you have injuries or they don't feel comfortable, try something different, and try a different type of shoe. Maybe that for you, a minimalist shoe is something that works well for you and it's not going to work well for somebody else. So, if it's not broke, don't fix it is my mentality. Don't try a different kind of shoes just because you see somebody else running in them. If you found a pair of shoes that's comfortable, continue to use those. Heart rate monitor I show as being required on the run, not just recommended. In order to make sure you're doing the intervals hard enough, I think it's important to know kind of where your heart rate stands as far as what zone you're in when you're doing the interval sessions, and then the minimal long runs that are included. It's important to keep your heart rate low enough to be able to sustain a longer distance. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Recommended for the run, I have a GPS watch, and that's, I use the GPS watch mainly to track not only distance that I'm running, but also what the current pace is. There's some workouts where I'll try to hit a current pace during a certain interval or portion of the workout, and GPS watch makes that really convenient to look down and see what your current pace is. And there are lots of options out there for GPS watches. I use a Garmin. I've had 2 different Garmins over the years. I never have the latest and greatest version. They're always coming out with something new, and usually if you wait for a new one to come out, you can get the old one, even buy it new pretty reasonably from a local dealer. You can find a GPS watch that's maybe a generation or 2 old that works perfectly well, that's going to give you all the information you need. So that's what I'd recommend. Then a cadence sensor on the run, that's just a little chip that you lace into your shoes that basically keeps track of your revolutions, your steps per minute on the run. And I started using that a few years ago. I found that to be really beneficial. I mean, there's two ways to increase how fast you're running, and that is a faster cadence or longer stride. Longer stride is usually something that leads to lots of injuries. So my thought was to increase my cadence. I started doing that a few years ago after I bought a cadence sensor, which ties directly into most GPS watches. Will have the ability to accept that signal from the cadence sensor, and I found that's something really beneficial as well. But it's not required, but I would say you could probably find one of those, and that may be something kind of fun to experiment with also. So moving on, gotten some questions about, what do you do if something goes wrong on race day and how you deal with it? I mean, there's last count, I've done over 50 triathlons of different distances, and I can honestly say there's never been a single race where I crossed the finish line and said to myself, everything went completely perfect today. There's nothing that I would have done different or could have happened different. There's always something that happens that's not quite as you had planned, or you weren't able to, complete certain portion of the race at the goal time you wanted or what you wanted to do it in. So, some things that typically happen, are flat tires. Those happen to everybody at some point. Obviously doing the majority of my workouts on a trainer, not getting flat tires while I'm riding my bike in the basement on the trainer. But if you're out on the road enough, which you will be during the training plan at some point, and when you're racing, you're going to get a flat tire. There's really nothing you can do to prevent it. But the key is knowing how to change the tire. So, I recommend just knowing how to change tires by practicing. It's fairly easy to practice in the comfort of your own home. Get someone to show you how to do it the first time, or even watch a YouTube video. There's videos on everything. You can find a video on how to change a bike tire and just practice it. The more you practice, the faster you're getting, then you're comfortable with it when it does come up during a race, and you're not going to panic and freak out and be worried about the time that you're losing. If you're practiced enough or efficient enough, you can change a flat tire in a matter of a minute or two and not lose much time. Other things that have happened to me, broken bottle cages. If you look at the picture that's on this slide, you'll see that I've got a water bottle tucked down the front of my jersey. What you can't see is on the back of my bike here, I have 2 bottle cages, both of which I cracked and had nowhere to put the bottle. The bottle would not stay in the cage because it was loose. One of them, my bike had fallen over the day before, and I figured, no need to fix that. I really just need one bottle. This was an Olympic distance race. I just needed one bottle on the bike. But then when I was mounting my bike coming out of transition, I had my bottle in the cage on the back, and as I was swinging my leg over, I clipped the bottle with my foot and broke the cage that the bottle was in, the other cage. So I had 2 broken cages and nowhere to put my bottle. And so I had to think quickly and figure out what I was going to do with that bottle. I knew I couldn't hold it in my hands. I want to be able to shift gears. I want to be safe. So I had to find somewhere to stick it. So I stuck it down the front of my jersey, and it worked out just fine. I was able to pull it out when I needed a drink and stuff it back in there. So, you're never going to be able to anticipate everything that could go wrong during a race, but the idea is to, when something does go wrong, stay calm, reassess the situation, figure out, all right, what are my options here? What am I going to do? This past year when I did Ironman Louisville, I was a couple miles into the bike. I noticed that my helmet felt kind of loose, and I reached up in my chin strap. I thought it was just unbuckled, but then when I went to try to buckle it back, I noticed that the strap had slipped out of the buckle itself, where the 2 sides snapped together. So it was a matter of, do I continue this race with my helmet being loose and risk, some severe head injury if I happen to crash, or do I stop? And so I stopped and side of the road, took my helmet off, re-looped the strap through the harness, and it cost me a little bit of time, but in the grand scheme of things, it was the right thing to do, and it didn't cost me my overall goals for the day. And so, that's just one of those things I could have never envisioned happening during a race, but it did happen, and you just have to deal with it. Something that is more common would be stomach issues. A lot of people have issues with their stomach, especially when they get to the run portion of a triathlon, where it makes it really hard for them to continue to move forward. They have an upset stomach. They're vomiting, or they're trying to find a porta pot. And at that point, it's hard to reassess and reevaluate your day when you're not sure if you can even finish the race. But as long as you remain positive and are able to think clearly in that situation, then you can get through these issues and complete the race. And maybe you're not going to accomplish all your goals, but maybe your goal changes from finishing the race in a certain time just to crossing the finish line. And given whatever the circumstances may be, then that could be the most important thing for you to do that day, is from a mental standpoint, is just to get to the finish line, especially if you've had lots of things go wrong during the race. So, the takeaway, just stay calm and positive, and improvise when you need to, and have the tools available to deal with issues that are common, such as flat tires or stomach issues. Know how you're going to handle that. Know what your body can handle as far as eating. Practice your nutrition, things like that, so that you can control as much as you can on race day. All right, kind of moving on, but keeping on a similar topic of mental toughness, especially when we're dealing with a long distance triathlon. The mental component is a huge one. And people, after I do Ironmans, people that don't do triathlon will talk to me about how hard is that to be out there that long, continuously moving forward, swimming and biking and running for that long. It's hard for, I've had people tell me I can't even sit and read a book for that long. I don't know how you can physically move your body forward that far. And and I'll tell people that a lot of it is physical, but I feel like the majority is mental. And I don't know exact percentages. I can't sit here and tell you that 60% mental and 40% physical. You obviously have to do the physical work and the training to get you to the start line on race day, but there's going to be times during a race, regardless of the distance, that you're going to have a strong mental game to get through, and you're going to have to be tough, and you're going to have to block out negative thoughts that are popping in your head. So, I do practice this, especially during training. I will talk to myself, sometimes out loud, depending on who's around. Sometimes it's just an inner dialogue I'm having with myself about finishing a certain interval or pushing through a workout. Most of the time you're going to be working out on your own. These workouts are going to be done with no one else around, without a training group, or without a coach standing next to you, pushing you. And, no one's going to know if you only do 6 intervals instead of 8, or if, you don't really push it those last 2. It was tough. It was starting to get hard, so I didn't really hit the goal power numbers on the bike, or that last running interval, I kind of slacked off a little bit, but I got them all done at least. No one's going to know if you slack off. So during training, you can think of building your mental strength as well as building your physical strength for race day by pushing yourself through those intervals. And what comes out of that, if you're able to mentally get yourself through a hard workout, is then when you're out on the course on race day, you can go back to that time during training, go back to that workout where you knew that your body was telling you that it had enough. It'd be a lot easier if we just, cut it short, cut the workout short, or slack off on these last few intervals. But if you were able to push through that and overcome that mentally, then you have that to build on. You can say, I was able to get through those tough workouts. I can get through this race. I can keep running. It would feel great to walk, but I don't need to walk. My body knows how to push through these tough times, these physical levels that these barriers I'm trying to push past. I've done it before. I can keep doing it. Giving yourself positive affirmations as you're racing, but also as you're training, can really build your mental toughness and help you on race day. And I like to visualize things as well. During a race, I will visualize. When I'm getting ready to exit the swim, I'll visualize, what am I going to do when I hit transition? When I get to T1, what do I have to do? And I will visually walk through everything I'm going to do in transition and the order I'm going to do things. So then when I get into transition, I'm not sitting there trying to think, okay, what do I need to do? And be worried about leaving something out. Visualize the transition, visualize yourself at certain points during the race. Visualize, obviously, yourself crossing the finish line is a big one. And think about the feeling that you're going to have when you accomplish your goals. And so continually having positive thoughts and blocking out the negative thoughts. Don't think about what will happen if I don't finish this race. Think about how great it's going to be when you do finish the race. And you'll be amazed at what your body can do from a mental and physical standpoint if you push yourself and if you stay positive. So, the mental side of it is very important. There's several books that I've read, and I go into the mental toughness aspect quite a bit in my book as well. So there's a large section on that. So it is a very important part of your training and your racing. Moving on to the recovery portion, the high intensity interval training is not easy on your body. It is going to be hard. The workouts are going to be tough. Your body's going to be sore, especially the first few weeks that you start into the training program. It's going to take a little bit of acclimation, your body adjusting, but there are things you can do to help aid that recovery. I already talked a little bit about diet and nutrition, which is a huge part of recovering and keeping that inflammation down in your body, is putting good foods in your body. Other things that I've done for several years now that I've found to be beneficial are a proper warm-up. And I'll go into details in the book about how to properly warm up for swimming, biking, and running. And it may or may not be what you think. It definitely is not consist of static stretching. They're all dynamic warm-ups, which means you are actively moving, trying to get your muscles and joints ready for the workout that's going to come. And with a high intensity workout, when doing intervals at a high level, you can't jump right in and just start doing them, or you will get injured. You have to warm your body up, and I go through in great detail what that consists of. And the warm-up, believe it or not, actually helps with recovery. If you have a good warm-up, it helps your muscles not break down as much. It helps with the recovery, and you'll see a huge difference if you warm up properly. Cool down is also a big one, and this one is a little bit harder to do a lot of times, especially with the whole training program. The way I've outlined it, it's for people that have a limited amount of time to train. So it's easy to skip that cool down, skip the warm down as it's also referred to, and just immediately get out of the pool as soon as you're done with that last interval, or jump off the bike, or time it so your run workout is finished with a really hard interval that ends right in front of your house or right in front of your car if you're parked somewhere. But the cool down is really important as well when it comes to recovery and helping your body and your muscles get that blood flowing to them, and so they can recover faster. Other tools that I use are a foam roller or the stick I've also used. And foam rolling, this is a foam roller that's pictured right here. It's a really inexpensive way to do self-massage. I mean, if you have an unlimited budget and can go to a masseuse several times a week, obviously that would be a better way to do it. They are trained. They can hit certain muscles and areas where you're having some tightness, or that you're wanting to work out some knots or rough spots that you're having. But the foam roller really does a good job of you know, getting that blood flowing to the tissue and fascia to help you recover faster, to keep your muscles loose and ready to train for the next day. It increases blood flow to different areas, which are going to bring nutrients into those areas and assist in repairing damaged muscle from the last workout you did. And, depending on who you ask, as far as trainers, you know, doctors, therapists, they may all tell you a different time when you should use foam rollers and the stick. And the stick is just a tool that helps you kind of isolate a little more on certain muscles and spots. But either one of them, some people may tell you do them immediately after your workout. Some people tell you to do it as part of your warm up. For me, it's something that I will try to do before bed at night, just because that's when I have 10 or 15 minutes of time that I can get it in. I don't have time immediately after workouts or first thing in the morning to do it. So my thought is, whenever you can get it in, you're going to get benefits from it. So it's just something that I make sure incorporate during my training season, to make sure I'm doing the foam rolling several nights a week. Every night would be great if possible, but try to stick with that. Compression is another thing I have listed here. Compression, if you're a triathlete, I'm sure you own a pair or have seen a pair of compression socks or compression sleeves. They're fairly new to the athletic community, I guess, within the last 10 years or so. Compression is just, prior to then, it was used by doctors to help with circulation and blood flow for various ailments. But, they're being used to enhance athletic performance and increase recovery now. And there's lots of studies out there that have, found an increase in the body's ability to recover after a workout when, wearing compression gear, compression socks or sleeves or whatever they may be. But, the thing that no one can officially say is whether this increased ability to recover was a physiological or psychological based recovery. So it may just be a placebo effect where you've got the compression gear on, you think that it's going to help you recover faster, so it does. But either way, there's really no downside, no disadvantage to wearing compression gear other than looking kind of dorky. Maybe you want to just put those on, those compression socks or sleeves on under your clothes if you're going to go out in public. That's maybe a good recommendation. But, if you're going to a triathlon or athletic related event, maybe you want to put your compression socks on, let everybody see them so they see how cool you are. You can always tell it's Ironman Louisville week when you walk around downtown Louisville and see people walking around the streets in their compression socks. So it's definitely a calling sign for triathletes, but it does have its benefits. The other thing that I'll mention here is, probably something that is not as common, but something that I've used for several years now. And it goes back to Chinese medicine with acupuncture and herbs. I have a special blend of Chinese herbs that were made for me that are strictly for recovery. They're used to boost energy and endurance and also help strengthen immunity and promote joint health as well. And it's a special blend of herbs, and it is a tea that I drink every day. And it's something that's become part of my regimen. I work with a local acupuncturist and Chinese medicine professional here where I am, and wherever you are, there's someone you can find that's credible that can help you with this. And I've seen great benefits to that. And also acupuncture. Acupuncture is not a new process. Dry needling is something different. I don't want to get those confused. That's a topic we could discuss another time. But, acupuncture can be used to help the body, process metabolic waste from the muscles. The lactic acid buildup. Acupuncture can help move that away from the muscles into the bloodstream, and also promotes free flow of blood that helps bring nourishment back to those muscles that are, that need the oxygen, need the blood to recover faster. And acupuncture can also be used to strengthen tendons and muscles. I've used it before if I've rolled my ankle or if my shoulder is hurting after a hard swim workout, I've used acupuncture to speed up the healing process, and it can bring blood flow and nutrients to certain parts of the body if it's done in the right way, and isolate that blood flow and speed up the recovery process. So it's definitely part of my regimen and something that I use on a regular basis, and I would recommend. It's obviously not required, but I think it is. All these things in the sum are things that I use to keep my body healthy during training and racing season. And I can't tell you that there's one that's more important than the other. I think it's the holistic approach to doing everything. And there's probably more techniques that are not listed on here that other people may use, that they may swear by, but these are kind of just the ones that I go to on a regular basis that I try to use, and they've worked for me. I've gone through the last 3 triathlon seasons now without any injuries, and that's pretty rare. Most triathletes will have an injury flare up at some time during training or racing throughout the year that they have to deal with, and so the proof is in the pudding. The fact that I'm able to stay injury free and healthy throughout several seasons now lets me know that I'm doing something right. Another question that came up was the vegetarian diets. There's lots of different diets that are out there, and depending on who you ask and where you look, everyone will tell you that their diet is the right one for everybody. The paleo diet seems to be pretty popular now. Vegans and vegetarian diets have been popular for a long time, but there are certain endurance athletes that are venturing out into different types of diets. There's several long course endurance athletes. Some of them are ultra runners that are vegetarians or vegans. There's some that are on a high-fat, low-carb diet and are very successful in their races. So the particular question that was asked, or what are my thoughts on a vegetarian diet and participating in endurance sports? So the way I thought I would approach this is just to talk a little bit about advantages and disadvantages, from my understanding of these diets. I'm not a vegetarian. I've never spent long periods of time eating a vegetarian or vegan diet, so I can't tell you how it would affect me personally. I will say no matter what the diet is, I think that they're all very individual. Everyone's body's different, depending on your background, where your ancestors came from. Certain diets may be more beneficial to you than others. So a couple advantages that I see from the vegetarian diet are that meat and dairy are acid forming. When your body's trying to digest them, it takes acid to break down meat and dairy, and that can lead to inflammation. But that inflammation is only caused when you're eating very high doses of meat and dairy, which depending on who the person is, some people probably are eating quite a bit of meat. If you're eating meat at heavy quantities at all meals, maybe this is an issue, and maybe it's leading to some inflammation. Another advantage of the vegetarian diet is, it typically leads to overall improvement of diet because, it has the word vegetable, is the root word for vegetarian. So usually vegetarians are eating lots of vegetables. They're typically concerned about the quality of the vegetables and food that they're eating and where it's coming from. So, I'd say they're probably eating a better overall diet than the average person. The last bullet point I have on here has to do with a recent study that came out from the World Health Organization that showed an increased cancer risk from meat consumption. I have my own thoughts on that. If you break down the numbers, it's a really minuscule percentage increase from red meat and processed meat consumption. Increased cancer risk from the meat consumption, but obviously, even at a very small percentage, you don't want to increase the risk if you can avoid it. So, that's another advantage I see to being a vegetarian is, that's one less risk you have to worry about. Disadvantages, from my point of view, there are, if you go through a grocery store, You'll see a lot of packaged foods, processed foods that are labeled, vegan or vegetarian friendly. It takes into no account the other ingredients that are in there. They're basically just letting you know, hey, we don't have any meat or meat products or any dairy, or for vegans, any, you know, uh, things that come from animals and any source in our food. But it has no regard for type of additives and chemicals, sugars, artificial sweeteners, artificial flavors, colors, dyes, things like that are put into these processed and packaged foods. So it could be a disadvantage if you're a vegetarian and you're looking for food sources and you disregard what else is being put into the food. It could, you could lead to having a very unhealthy diet, even though you are a vegetarian, if you're not watching what you're eating and where it's coming from and what other ingredients are in the food. Other disadvantages are, from a nutrient deficiency standpoint, I'd say this is probably the one that vegetarians and vegans have to combat more often than not. People will say, you don't eat meat. Well, how do you get all the vitamins that you need from meat? The iron, the amino acids, B and D vitamins that you find in meat sources. And there are other ways you can get these nutrients, obviously through supplements, but there are non-meat foods that contain amino acids, that contain B and D vitamins, that contain iron. And with this and with any supplements, I would suggest that you not just go start taking a supplement that you buy off the shelf and start taking them because I take them or because somebody else told you need to take them. I would start by going to your primary care physician and getting a blood panel done. Have them take some blood, send off to a lab, and look at your levels. Look at, are you deficient in iron? Are you deficient in vitamin D? And then see what their recommendations are as far as, if you need to supplement with those or not. That's always a good place to start. You can give your body too much of these nutrients, these macro and micronutrients, and if you don't know what your starting level is and you just start taking a supplement, then you could be doing more harm than good. So that's always a good place to start. But especially with vegetarians, I would recommend, if you are a vegetarian or you're thinking about becoming a vegetarian, find out what your nutrient levels are in these particular vitamins and iron level, see what your iron level is, and determine, do you need to supplement or do you need to find food sources that will help you get these levels up to a healthy spot. So to sum up the vegetarian question, I think it can be done. I think as long as you cover your bases and you're strict about the type of foods you eat and where they're coming from, and cut out continue to cut out the processed foods. There's no diet out there where processed packaged foods are going to be beneficial to your training and to your racing and to your performance. There's just no place for them in any diet, in my opinion. So regardless of what type of diet you follow, just try to eat whole foods in their natural form as much as possible, and I think you can achieve very good results regardless of what your athletic endeavors are if you stick with that. So another question that was asked kind of, on the holistic approach to things, which is, from my viewpoint, I try to approach things, I've promote myself as being the holistic athlete just because I like to encompass everything in life when it comes to approaching athletic endeavors. Let's not just look at the training and racing, but let's look at everything else that's going on around you and going on in your world and in your body. So a question that I got was, it's kind of overwhelming to look at everything that I do as far as my holistic approach. What would be the first steps or some small steps if someone wanted to start trying to be more holistic in their approach to their lifestyle? So some things that, I would recommend right out of the gate, I've spent a lot of time talking about it on this Q&A session, would be diet. So the first thing you need to start looking at is start improving the diet immediately, regardless of what your goals are athletically or with your life. They're cleaning up your diet and eating healthy is going to do nothing but add to the benefits that you are achieving through athletic training or through some other things that you're attempting to set goals in your life for. And, it doesn't mean that you have to go out today or tomorrow and clean out your pantry of everything that's processed and start going to farmers markets every weekend, buying everything organic and, go cold turkey on eating sugar. Take baby steps in your diet as well. Start off by picking one meal a day. Maybe breakfast is the easiest meal for you to start. Let's just, start eating a healthy breakfast. Cut out the processed foods at breakfast, the bagels, the donuts, the pastries. You know, don't go through a box of Pop Tarts, for breakfast. Start eating whole foods in their natural form for breakfast. Eat more eggs for breakfast. Eat an avocado for breakfast. Find things that are found in nature and try to eat those for breakfast and see how you feel. See if you notice a difference after a week, 2 weeks of just changing what you eat for breakfast. And then I guarantee you will tell a difference. You'll feel better. You'll have more energy throughout the day. And, then start maybe incorporating that same mentality into what you're eating for lunch or your snacks throughout the day. Or maybe try cutting out soda if you drink sodas or you're hooked on artificial sweeteners or sugar. Try cutting out one thing at a time and then over time slowly progressing. And as you start to feel better and you see the benefits from making changes in your diet, it will become easier and you will be motivated to make those changes and eventually get to the point where you're eating a fairly clean diet. No one's perfect. I'm not perfect. I'll slip up in my diet and I'll eat things that I know are not healthy and not good for me. But it's a balance, and as long as you don't let those times happen too frequently, your body will thank you for it, and you will see improved results in how you feel and your athletic performance. So that's the first thing I would recommend doing. Also, just listen to your body. I mean, that kind of goes along with the diet. You'll be able to tell a difference in how you feel immediately once you clean up your diet. Once you start eating better, you'll have more strength. You'll have mental clarity that you didn't have before. Uh, you just feel better in the morning when you get out of bed. Your complexion will clear up. There's lots of benefits to eating healthy. But another thing about listening to your body is, how do you feel after certain workouts? If you've got a certain workout on the schedule and your body's trying to tell you, today's not the day, let's take a day off, then you take a day off. That this is a long training plan. If you're training for a full distance triathlon, there's months and months and months of training. Taking a day off here or there for what is scheduled. I mean, the schedule has an off day once a week, but if you need another off day because your body is telling you that this isn't the day for it, or maybe you start a workout and you get through the first couple intervals and you're just feeling bad and you know that something is off, well, listen to your body. It's trying to tell you something for a reason. If you've got a nagging injury and something that flares up every time you run, or every time you do a certain workout, something is hurting, listen to your body. Go see someone. Go see a physical therapist. Go see someone. About that injury that keeps flaring up. Don't ignore it. If you listen to your body and really become in tune with what your body's trying to tell you, that will help your overall lifestyle. Another thing I have here is look to nature for healing. At some point, our society has become very dependent on medication and drugs for healing. And in my family, we have decided that we will try to look for natural remedies for ailments that we have before we look to pharmaceuticals or even over-the-counter drugs. And we've had great success doing that. There's lots of things in nature. If you if you look into it and you do your own research and start looking at advantages of essential oils, advantages of different foods and plants that are found in nature, and what they can do to help your body, then you can really realize that you can heal yourself without having to worry about side effects. If you are given any type of medication or drug, there are always side effects to that. And, yeah, they're going to be necessary in some situations depending on what you're dealing with. But, my goal and our family's goal is to always start by trying to look for a natural way to heal. And I think that is a huge step to having a holistic lifestyle, is, looking for those natural healing methods. Uh, Another thing I have here is to manage your stress. This is one that I put on here and I struggle with. But if you can find time during the day to meditate or to manage your stress levels, then that will help the way you feel overall. I mean, you can even I use my time when I'm running as a time to meditate and to clear my head and to just remove all the stresses that I have throughout the day and in my life. And find that time to do that throughout the day, whether that means going to a yoga session or finding a spot in your house or somewhere outside that you can meditate on a daily or regular basis, just to clear your head and clear your thoughts and become more in tune with your body. I think that's another step to the holistic approach that I would highly recommend. And if you can find that time to just relax, that will help you in your training as well. Your body needs to have time to heal. Something else I'll throw in here is sleep. Obviously, if you're looking into this type of training plan, it's because you're very limited in the amount of time you have in the day, but your body has to heal, your muscles and joints have to heal, and the best time for them to do that is while you're sleeping. So make sure you're getting adequate sleep. That's something that I still struggle with. I do my workouts early in the morning, so when my alarm goes off at 4:30 every morning, I'm getting out of bed, and that means that for me to get an adequate amount of sleep, I need to try to be in bed at 9 or 9:30, hopefully lights out by then, in order for me to get the amount of sleep I need for my body to heal and recover. And that doesn't always happen, and that seems like the thing a lot of people will cut back on, and when they're training really hard, is something that their body needs more than anything else, which is time for rest and recovery. So I would add that in here. It's all part of the holistic approach. And yeah, it can maybe seem overwhelming right at the beginning, but I didn't start doing all these things on day one. This has kind of been an ongoing process for myself and for our family over several years. And so that's kind of the way I would recommend doing it. You're not going to, do everything right out of the gate, but if you start implementing small things one at a time, you'll start to see the difference, and it'll encourage you to do even more. So a question that was asked, this type of training, the high intensity interval training, is obviously different than the typical full distance triathlon training plan, which usually consists of lots of long swims, multiple 100+ mile bike rides, sometimes, every weekend as we get, closer to race day. Same with the run, going out on, 18, 20, 24-mile runs once a week or once every 2 weeks for several months. And obviously you're not going to be able to do that and average 7 hours a week of training. So the question was asked, what's the longest swim, bike, and run that I've completed in training leading up to the Ironman races that I've done? And as you get the book and you see the training plan, you'll notice that there are a couple longer workouts put in there toward the end as you get closer to your race day. As I mentioned at the beginning, your aerobic engine is going to be built through the high intensity interval training. So don't feel like there's no way your body can make it through 146 140.6 miles unless you've trained for it. You don't have to do a 112-mile bike ride. You don't have to have run 26.2 miles for your body to complete it. You will have that aerobic engine. It'll be there. It'll be ready for you. You have to be mentally in a place where you have the confidence to know that you've done the work and you'll be ready come race day. I've done it myself. I've followed this exact program now twice, leading up to Ironman races, and have had no issue with the distances and completing them during the race. So the plan only consists of 1 to 2 swims over 2 miles. One of those is usually in a pool. One of those is in open water to work on pacing. And you can usually find an open water swim race somewhere in your region or your area that you can do at some point, preferably later in the season after you've built up that endurance. And I like to do that just to make sure I've got my pacing down and see how I feel after my body swims 2 miles. A full distance triathlon is 2.4 miles of swimming. How do you feel when you get out of the water? And what are you going to take as far as nutrition is concerned on race day before the beginning of the race? What are you putting in your stomach before you jump in the water and swim 2.4 miles? And how does your body handle that? So these 1 to 2 swims are a good time to practice that and see, make sure you've got enough calories on board to complete that swim, because obviously you're not going to get any nutrition during the swim, but also make sure whatever you're putting in there before the race that you're able to digest without any stomach issues. For the ride, for the bike, this past year when I did Ironman Louisville, I did a 90-mile ride, and then a separate time I did a 100-mile ride a few weeks later. Those were the only rides I did that got up into that high distance range. And I did those for a couple of reasons. One of them was similar to the swim, to work on my pacing and work on the power that I wanted to maintain during the race itself. I wanted to practice that, see what that felt like, see what cadence I wanted to try to maintain, see what that felt like to ride for 100 miles. But also, and more importantly for me, was to practice my nutrition. Without preparing the nutrition that you're going to use on race day and actually going out and spending 5, 6, 7 hours out on your bike eating and drinking what you will do on race day, you have no idea how your body is going to handle that. So you need to practice that. For me, that's the main reason. I would have been very confident that I could complete a 112-mile bike ride without ever riding 100 miles based on all the interval training that I'd done up to that point. But I wanted to get that long ride in to practice my nutrition, to make sure I wasn't going to have any digestive issues on race day. And if you do the first long ride and you have some issues, change it up, try something new, practice it on a shorter ride, and then give it a try on that second long ride and make sure that nutrition is dialed in for race day. Same goes for the run. I did an 18-mile run, and then probably 4 weeks or 5 weeks before the race, I did a 20-mile run, and the purpose of those runs were to make sure that I had my pace and my heart rate dialed in. I had a heart rate zone that I was wanting to stay in, and I practiced that during that long run. I would continuously look down at my watch, make sure I was staying in that heart rate zone, and I knew what pace that was going to equate to. And also I took with me my nutrition on those runs, what I planned to use on race day. I took it with me on those runs, and I practiced how often am I going to drink from these bottles? How often am I going to eat this nutrition? Every 15 minutes, every 20 minutes, I practiced exactly. It was a dress rehearsal for race day for the swim, the bike, and the run, so that there's nothing left up to chance when it comes to your nutrition. You know exactly how many calories you're going to be taking in, what they're going to consist of, how often you need to be taking drinks, how much water you need to take in to feel good. You practice all these things during the training so that you don't have to worry if it's correct on race day. And so, the question was, what's the longest that I've done? I did 1 to 2 of each of these longer distances, but that's all I did. I didn't go out on those long group rides every weekend or the long group runs because the endurance base is already there. The aerobic engine was already built. I didn't need to go on those long rides to build that aerobic base. And frankly, I didn't want to because that is a lot of time away from my family that I didn't want to spend out on the road. I mean, it's fun to go on a long bike ride with a group of friends, but that's, including the time uh, to get there and back. You're talking, 8+ hours that you could be gone on a Saturday, and with three small children, Saturdays are a time where we do family activities. We've got fun things to do planned on Saturdays throughout the summer. Even in the fall and winter, we've got things we're doing on the weekends. I don't want to miss that time. And so I would put these long rides, these 1 to 2 rides and runs on the calendar. My wife would know when they were coming up. Weeks in advance, we talk about it. Hey, I'm going to be gone this Saturday morning. I'll be back at this time. Can we plan something for that afternoon or make sure we don't put anything on the calendar for that day that I want to be sure that I'm a part of? So you work with your significant other, you work with those in your life that are important to you, and you plan these rides and runs around everyone's schedule when you can. And it's not every weekend, so it doesn't become an issue where your family becomes irritated that you're always gone and you're missing important things in life. And so all you need is 1 to 2 of these to practice your pacing, practice your nutrition, and you will be ready for race day. So that's all that's the majority of the questions that came in advance that I wanted to cover. I'll now go live and answer any additional questions that have come in since we initially recorded this. So hopefully that answered everyone's questions, and look forward to it. And one thing I wanted to also add is, with the purchase of the electronic book when it comes out, we will have a members only, invited people only Facebook page that will be for additional questions that you have as you get the book and start to read it. Questions you have for me, I will be a moderator on that forum, and we can talk amongst each other, get questions answered that you may have. It'll be for those people that purchase the book only. If you're not on Facebook or don't want to go that avenue, you will have a special email address that you can use to communicate directly with me and ask questions as you get into the book. There's a lot of good information in there, and if you read it, I have no doubt that you will have some questions, and I'm always happy to help with advice, things that I've learned over many years of training and many years of research and trying things on myself. I'm more than happy to share with you. So hopefully this question and answer period was beneficial, and I look forward to helping you achieve your goals and keep everyone in your life happy and achieve that balanced approach to training and life.